They had him surrounded before he even finished his sentence. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to step away from the counter," the branch manager said, voice too loud, too sharp, slicing through the Friday afternoon murmur of the downtown lobby. The bank was gleaming marble and glass, the kind of pristine financial cathedral where people spoke in hushed tones. But now every whisper had gone quiet. Eyes turned, heads angled, phones tilted into position. The old man in the faded navy peacoat didn't move. He rested both hands on the polished counter, fingers knotted with age, dark skin etched with decades. A simple leather wallet lay open in front of him, his driver's license face up beside a check and a worn debit card. "I'm not stepping away," he replied, voice calm. "You still haven't explained why my account is suddenly a problem." Behind him, the queue had backed up all the way to the glass doors. A toddler whined. Someone sighed dramatically. The fluorescent lights hummed. The teller looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. "I already told you," she murmured, glancing nervously at the manager. "The system flagged this transaction. It's a large withdrawal. I just have to." "You just have to do your job," the manager snapped, cutting her off. "And my job is to make sure we don't facilitate fraud." He turned back to the old man. "So, sir, either you step aside and wait while we verify your information," he made the air quotes with a faint sneer, "or I'll have security escort you outside." The old man blinked once, slow. His name was on the ID, Walter T. King, 69 years old. The kind of face that had learned patience the hard way. "You verified everything," Walter said quietly. "You checked the signature. You checked the PIN. You checked the last 4 digits of my social. You called the number on file." He held the manager's gaze. "And I answered it. Because it's my phone." A couple of people in line shifted, clearly listening. The manager, stocky, red tie too tight, name tag reading D. Harris, branch manager, folded his arms. "And I've still got concerns," Harris replied. "You show up out of nowhere, trying to withdraw $40,000 in cash. No appointment. No advance notice. That's not normal behavior for our—" He hesitated just long enough for the meaning to sink in. "For most of our customers." Walter's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "I've been a customer here longer than you've been alive, son." A few people snorted softly. Someone near the back muttered, "Damn." Harris flushed. "Look," he said, lowering his voice but not enough. "We've had a string of scams targeting older people. Criminals pretending to be them. You could have stolen his wallet. His phone." He leaned closer. "It's not my fault if the system thinks something doesn't add up." "The system," Walter repeated slowly. His gaze drifted to the large digital screen rotating between financial wellness slogans and smiling stock photos of diverse families. "We see you. We hear you. We stand with you." The irony hung in the air like a bad smell. Behind Walter, a young woman in an oversized hoodie and box braids raised her phone a little higher, the camera already recording. She held it vertically, thumb hovering over the screen as the live comments ticked up. "At JJ_live, you'll look at this. They blocking this old black man from his OWN money at Landmark Bank downtown. This ain't it." Heart emojis and angry face reactions floated up the screen. "So, please," the teller whispered, almost pleading now. "Maybe if you sit, we can." "I'm fine standing," Walter said. His voice was steady, but inside his chest his heart gave a single, heavy thud. Not from fear, from recognition. It was a scene he had known, in different clothes, in different years. A school office, a shop doorway, a roadside shoulder under blue and red lights. Different uniforms. Same tone. "Mr. Harris," he said, evenly. "If you believe a crime is being committed, that's serious. You should be sure before you make that kind of accusation." Harris bristled. "I don't believe anything, sir. I follow protocols. You don't match the pattern on this account. The transaction is suspicious, and your documentation doesn't convince me." He gave a tight, clipped smile. "So yes, I'm escalating." He signaled toward the security guard, a tall man in an ill-fitting blazer by the door. "Ethan, could you come here, please?" The security guard stepped over, shoulders tightening. "I'd like this gentleman escorted to the waiting area," Harris said, loud enough for half the lobby to hear. "We're going to contact the authorities to verify his identity." "Authorities?" Walter repeated. "Police, sir," Harris said with forced patience. "Standard practice. If everything checks out, you'll be free to go about your day." Someone near the back whispered, "They're calling the cops on him for trying to get his money." The whisper turned into a murmur, then a low ripple. Heads turned. Phones lifted. It was like watching a wave gather itself. Walter heard the words police and felt the room shrink around him. Not in fear. Fear he had made peace with decades ago. In anger. Slow burning. Old. Tired. But his voice, when he spoke, was almost gentle. "I walked in here to withdraw funds from my own account. I handed you my identification. I answered every question. I've been insulted at least 3 times during this conversation, and now you're trying to march me away under suspicion of fraud in front of all these people." He let the silence stretch. "And you think this is standard?" Harris didn't flinch. "I think I have a responsibility," he said. "We're done debating this. Ethan." The guard shifted, embarrassed. "Sir, if you just—" Walter looked up at him. There was no pleading in his eyes, no panic, only something like tired disappointment. "You put a hand on me," Walter said softly, "and this will become a kind of problem you are not ready for." The words were not a threat. Not really. They landed differently, like a fact delivered from a higher altitude. The girl live streaming muttered, "Oh, he sounds like he means that." Viewers climbed. 3.4K watching. At Sunnyboy22. Ask him his name. Get his name on camera. "Excuse me." A woman in a blazer stepped forward from the line, phone in hand. I'm an attorney. Maybe we can all calm down a second." "So, do you want representation before they—" "We're not arresting anybody," Harris snapped. "There's no need for a lawyer. We're simply verifying his identity with law enforcement support." Walter's lips pressed together. "Call them, then," he said. Harris blinked. "What?" "You heard me," Walter replied. "Call the police. You're determined. Go ahead." Harris hesitated just a moment too long, thrown off by the quiet in the old man's voice. Then his jaw set. "Fine." He tapped his headset, muttering into the MIC pin near his collar, asking the back office staff to dial. Words like possible identity theft and on-site suspect drifting out into the tense air. The livestream chat exploded. At Truth_Teller, suspect is standing there with ID. At Millennial Money, landmark bank about to trend for the wrong reasons. A woman in scrub clutched a deposit envelope tighter, eyes haunted. A delivery driver with a blue cap folded his arms, watching. A teenager in a school hoodie whispered, "Yo, this is messed up," to his friend. Walter let out a slow breath. He turned his head slightly, catching his own reflection in the polished chrome pen holder on the counter, gray-flecked close-cropped hair, deep lines around his mouth, eyes that had seen the inside of boardrooms and bus depots, eviction notices and equity term sheets. He had other things to do that afternoon. Calls to make, documents to sign, decisions to weigh that would ripple through markets. Instead, he was here, back at the counter, back at the proving ground. Outside, faint but growing, the sound of sirens began to thread through the air. Harris smiled thinly. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. King," he said. Walter studied him, and in that moment, something in his gaze sharpened. Not anger, not even pity. Resolve. He looked around at the watching faces, at the phones angled like tiny judgmental moons, at the girl in the hoodie whose livestream bubble now read 7.1K. He gave a small, almost rueful nod. "All right," Walter said quietly. "Let's see who's really being verified today." He straightened his coat. As the sirens drew nearer and the security guards swallowed hard, as the chat filled with comments and the marble-floored lobby held its breath, a thought slid through Walter's mind. They have no idea who they just called the police on. And a few blocks away, in a glass tower with the same bank's logo on top, a notification lit up the CEO's phone. It was a link, a live stream, captioned, "Landmark Bank detains black senior trying to withdraw his own money." Hours earlier, Walter King had been sitting at a kitchen table that had seen better days. Sunlight poured through the window, turning the dust motes into drifting gold. The kettle whistled softly on the stove. The faint smell of jasmine tea mingled with the clean citrus of freshly mopped floors. On the wall above the table hung 3 framed photos. In the first, a much younger Walter, maybe 22, stood on a cracked sidewalk in front of a little storefront. A hastily painted sign above it read King's Auto and Repair. He was grinning, grease on his cheek, one arm around a woman in a floral dress, the other resting on the hood of a beat-up sedan. In the second picture, years later, he was in a cheap suit, standing outside a small bank, holding a denied loan application in one hand and his daughter's tiny fingers in the other. His smile was different in that one. Tighter, determined. The third photo was glossy and recent. Walter in a tailored charcoal suit, silver hair neat, standing beside a sleek glass building bearing a familiar blue and silver logo. Landmark Community Bank. On the little plaque below, in small lettering, it read, Board of Directors, Chairman, Walter T. King. He didn't look at the photos much. He didn't need to. They were in his bones. Daddy, your tea's getting cold, his daughter called from the hallway. She walked into the kitchen with her phone in one hand and a blazer slung over the other arm. Her name was Nadine. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, same set to her jaw as his when she was thinking. I'm coming, Walter said. He rose slowly, his knees complaining, and poured the steaming water into his mug. You sure you don't want to ride downtown? Nadine asked, slipping her blazer on. I have a meeting a few blocks from the main branch at 9. We could go together. Walter stirred his tea. I'm not going to the tower, he said. I'm stopping by the Maple Street branch first. Take the car, baby. I'll catch the bus. Nadine frowned. What's on Maple? He gave her a look. You know what's on Maple, he said. She sighed. Maple Street was one of the older branches, sitting at the edge of a neighborhood that had been redlined for decades, then gentrified half-heartedly, then left in the strange limbo of half-renovated storefronts and half-forgotten families. Complaints had started filtering up weeks ago. A mother turned away when trying to open a basic checking account. A small business owner asked for more documentation than the policy required. A young black teacher told to come back with a parent or guardian when she tried to discuss a mortgage pre-approval. Walter had listened, quietly. He'd taken notes in his worn leather notebook, the same one he'd carried when he was hustling mechanic gigs out of a groaning garage. There had been phrases. They said I didn't look like I could afford that. They said people from my area had a history of defaults. They said it was just policy, but the lady behind me in line walked right through with less paperwork. Numbers were one thing. Risk models, debt-to-income ratios, capital requirements. Those were the bones of banking. But tone? Tone was something else. You know, I've already talked to HR, Nadine said, pouring herself coffee. They're reviewing branch practices. She added verbal aid quotes. There's scheduled training next month. Bias workshops. All the stuff we always do. I know, Walter said. And the Maple manager, what's his name? Harris. He has stellar performance metrics, Nadine added. High account growth. Low delinquency. They think he's one of their stars. Walter took a sip of tea. He said. Nadine raised an eyebrow. What? Walter tapped the side of his mug thoughtfully. You ever notice, he said, how the people with the shiniest spreadsheets always seem to be working with the same kind of customer? Nadine hesitated. You think he's cherry-picking, she said slowly. I think he's filtering, Walter replied, on more than credit score. He walked back to the table, his slippers whispering against the tile, and Saturday. Policy on paper can be perfect, he went on. But the real policy lives in the ways people get welcomed or turned away. The words, the looks, the way someone can say you don't belong here without using those words. Nadine stared at him for a moment, then pulled out a chair and sat too. You could just call him in, she said. Make him sit across the big boardroom table. Ask him directly. You're the chairman. You don't have to play detective at some branch lobby. Walter smiled faintly. You ever tell a person they got a bias problem? He asked. She snorted. Yeah. How'd they respond? Defensive. Angry. I treat everyone the same. She rolled her eyes. You know how it is. Exactly, Walter said. You ask them. They show you the numbers that prove they are fair. You tell them. They show you they are offended. But you watch them. He nodded to himself. When they think nobody important is watching. That's when you see the truth. Nadine shook her head, but her eyes were soft. You could send someone else, she said. We pay consultants good money to do this type of audit. You don't need to be the one. Walter chuckled. Baby, I've been walking into banks and being told no since before you were born, he said. First branch manager I met, he looked at my hands and asked me if I was sure I'd understand the paperwork. Nadine winced. And that was after I'd read every line of the Small Business Administration Handbook twice, Walter added. Studied it at the kitchen table every night. Circled terms I didn't know. Went to the library to look them up because the librarian was kinder than the man at the loan desk. He looked up at the photos on the wall. His eyes lingered on the second one, the denied loan outside a small bank. The beginning of the long road. They told me no, he said softly. Told me I was too high risk. So I built that garage business cash by cash. Took twice as long. Worked twice as many hours. When the numbers finally spoke too loud for them to ignore, they said yes like it was their idea all along. He looked back at Nadine. When I bought into Landmark, they said I was an inspiring story for the brand, he went on. Smiled. Took pictures. Put me on brochures. He tapped his chest gently. But what I am, first, is a man who remembers every time a door was closed on him for no good reason. His voice softened. If one of my branches is closing doors like that, I don't need a consultant to tell me. I need to see it with my own eyes. Nadine's shoulders sagged. You're going alone? She asked. Walter nodded. In this coat, he said, plucking at the frayed cuff. Flat shoes. Old wallet. He smiled. Let's see how they treat a man who doesn't walk in with a suit and a driver. Nadine bit her lip. Just be careful, she said finally. Some of these younger managers, they think metrics are morality. They'll call security on their own grandmother if the chart says risk. Walter's eyes crinkled. Good thing I'm nobody's grandmother, he said. She swatted his arm lightly. You know what I mean. He reached over and squeezed her hand. It's just a visit, he said. And I'm just a customer. They won't even know my name. Her eyes flicked to the framed photo of him in front of the bank. That's what worries me, she murmured. The kettle whistled itself out. Later, after Nadine left, Walter changed into his pea coat, slipped his worn leather notebook into the inner pocket, and picked up the envelope that had arrived the day before. It was from their investment arm. Inside was the check, large, even to him, that he'd decided to test them with. Money he could transfer in a few keystrokes if he wanted. But cash was visceral. Cash made people nervous. He'd sign it at the counter, see how they handled it. He paused at the door, hand on the knob. His reflection stayed back at him from the small mirror on the wall. Not the man from the glossy boardroom photo. Just Walter, gray at the temples. A line of old scars on his knuckles from fighting wrenches and rusted bolts. You deserve to know, he told that reflection quietly. If the house you built is starting to rot. Then he stepped out into the morning, into a city that had never quite decided if it loved him or tolerated him. At the bus stop, a kid with headphones nodded at him. Walter nodded back. When the bus arrived, he climbed aboard, dropped his fare, and sat near the middle, watching neighborhoods blur and shift out the window. The shining glass tower of Landmark Bank rose in the distance like a promise. He did not go there. He got off 3 stops early, on Maple Street. The branch was tucked between a laundromat and a payday loan store. A small grocery with Spanish signs sat across the street, its windows plastered with discount flyers. Walter stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching people drift in and out. A delivery truck idled near the curb. A man in a reflective vest carried out a stack of boxes. The bank's logo gleamed above the door, blue and silver against red brick. He exhaled slowly, then stepped inside. The cool air hit his face along with the faint scent of toner, cleaning spray, and something citrusy from the automatic air freshener. Soft music played. A wall-mounted screen looped through the bank's promises. Your community, your future, your bank. There were 3 tellers behind the counter. A young woman in a hijab adjusting her glasses while she typed. A middle-aged man with a slight limp counting cash carefully. And at the far end, a nervous-looking teller with dark curls and a trembling smile. Near the back, in a glass-walled office, a man in a crisp shirt and bright red tie stood over a desk, gesturing as he spoke into a phone. His name tag caught the light. D. Harris, branch manager. Walter took a place in line. He watched. An older white gentleman in a golf shirt and khakis walked up to the counter with no appointment, asking about a short-term loan for some renovations back at the house. The nervous teller brightened, printed some forms, and told him they could fast-track his application. Behind him, a young black woman in a lab coat waited patiently with a folder of documents, pay stubs neatly clipped, a lease agreement, a letter of employment. When she stepped up to the next teller, Walter listened. "How much longer have you been at this job?" the teller asked. Just over a year," she replied. "I've been a nurse 2 years, but this position is." "We usually like to see at least 2 years in the same role for mortgage pre-approval," the teller said, frowning. "Do you have a co-signer? Parents? Spouse?" "No," she said. "Just me. I was hoping." "Maybe come back in another year," the teller interrupted softly. "Or find someone with more established credit to apply with you." "But my score is 720, the woman said, color rising in her cheeks. "And the email I got from you guys said I was pre-qualified in." The teller gave a helpless shrug. "Those pre-qualification emails are automated," he said. "They're not promises." The woman nodded, lips pressed together, and gathered her papers slowly. She stepped away, shoulders tight. Walter watched her walk past. Another door closed, he thought. The line moved. When it was his turn, he stepped up to the counter where the nervous teller with the dark curls smiled at him. "Hello, sir," she said. "How can I help you today?" He set his wallet and the envelope on the counter with care. "I'd like to make a withdrawal," he said. "How much?" she asked. 40,000, Walter replied. Her eyes widened. "Oh, let me just." Her gaze dipped to his coat, his worn shoes, his plain watch. Then back to the check and his ID as she slid them toward herself. "Can I see your debit card as well?" she asked. "Of course," Walter said. He handed it over. She typed his name into the system. Her brow furrowed, then smoothed. "Okay, Mr. King," she said. "I see your account here. I'm just going to verify some details." "All right." He answered every question. Address, phone number, date of birth, mother's maiden name. Her nervousness grew with each correct answer. She glanced toward the glass office. One moment, please," she said. "I just need to get approval from my manager for a withdrawal this size." Walter nodded. "Take your time," he said. She hurried to the office, knocked, and stepped in. Harris scowled, waved her in impatiently, and closed the door behind her. Through the glass, Walter watched their silhouettes. So the manager glanced toward him, eyebrows shoot up. Saw the way his mouth tightened as the teller pointed back to the screen. Saw him snatch the paperwork from her hand, scan it, and shake his head. Walter's fingers drummed once on the counter, then stilled. He knew that look. He'd seen it from the first man who told him no loan. From a landlord who said we just rented it as soon as he saw Walter step into the lobby. From the dealership manager who suddenly couldn't locate the paperwork for the car he'd already been approved for. He knew how this scene went. But he also knew something else. Today, he wasn't the young man on the outside of those decisions. He was the man whose name the boardroom chairs turned toward. The man whose signature had signed off on this branch's budget last quarter. The man whose vote had saved this bank during a lean year. The man whose name, if the teller had scrolled far enough, sat under the list of key institutional shareholders on the screen. He thought of Nadine's words. You don't have to play detective in some branch lobby. But he did. Not because he liked drama. Because systemic problems never showed themselves in conference calls or quarterly reports. They showed themselves in moments like this. The office door opened. "Sir." Harris called from across the lobby. Voice deceptively polite. "Would you mind stepping over here a moment?" Walter met his gaze. And in that brief second, as their eyes locked, he recognized something in the man. Not simple malice. Worse. Certainty. Certainty that he was right. Certainty that the system would back him. Certainty that whatever story this old black man had about $40,000, it was less believable than the spreadsheets in his head. Walter gave a small, courteous nod. Of course, he said. He picked up his wallet and walked toward the office. He had no idea yet that the live video of their interaction would soon explode across the internet, or that the CEO of Landmark, scrolling between meetings, would nearly spit out her coffee when she saw his face on a stranger's screen, standing in her bank's lobby, being treated like a criminal. He just knew this. Whatever was about to happen at Maple Street, he was going to let it unfold, and he was going to remember every word. Now the sirens were close enough to vibrate the glass. Back in the present, the lobby felt crowded with sound and silence at once. The girl with the hoodie had stepped to the side for a better angle. Her live stream now read 12.3K watching. Comments flew by in furious streaks. At Black Lawyer, someone get his name. This is unlawful detention if they don't even have cause. At Mama_Bear, my daddy looks just like him. I'm shaking. Pouting face. Harris straightened his tie. Security will escort you to the seating area while we wait, he said. I am not moving, Walter replied. I have the right to stand where my business brought me. Right here. His voice was clear. And I have the right to know exactly what you told the police. Harris's jaw clenched. I told them we have a potential identity theft situation, he said. Older gentleman being coerced, possibly. Suspicious withdrawal pattern. It's for your own protection. Interesting, Walter said. He glanced at the girl with the phone. Miss, he asked politely. You're recording this? She swallowed, startled to be addressed directly. Why, yeah. I'm streaming, sir. Is that okay? It's more than okay, Walter said. Make sure you keep it rolling. The comments exploded. At JJ_live, he told her to keep filming. Oh, it's ON. Harris's face flushed. Recording is not permitted inside the branch without consent, he snapped. In a public lobby, the attorney woman near the front interjected. You have no reasonable expectation of privacy here. She's perfectly within her rights. This is private property, Harris countered, and I can ask her to stop. He took a step toward the girl. Walter's voice cut across the space like a bell. I would ask you not to do that, he said. Harris spun back. You are in no position to ask anything, he said. Walter tilted his head, studying him. You'd be surprised, he murmured. The doors slid open with a hiss, and two uniformed officers walked in, checking their surroundings with practiced eyes. The chatter intensified. Afternoon, the taller officer said calmly, stepping forward. We got a call about a possible fraud situation. That's correct, officer, Harris said, speaking quickly. This man, he gestured toward Walter, is attempting to withdraw $40,000 in cash. His documentation is questionable. Behavior inconsistent. I'm concerned he may be under duress or impersonating the account holder. Walter stood very still, hands visible at his sides. The officer's gazes swept over him, over the counter, over the ID and card lying there. One of them, the shorter officer with graying hair at the temples, looked tired more than anything else. Sir, he said to Walter, can you confirm your name? Walter Theodore King, Walter replied. And this your ID? Yes. The officer picked it up, checked it against the computer screen. The teller turned toward him. It matched. Address, date of birth, photo. You called about coercion, the officer said to Harris. Is someone here pressuring him? Harris hesitated. Well, not visibly, he said. But these scams are sophisticated. Did he say he was being threatened? The officer cut in. No, Harris admitted. But you know how these people can be manipulated. They don't always realize it's happening. These people, Walter repeated softly. The officer glanced at him. Mr. King, are you here of your own free will? He asked. Yes, Walter said. Anyone forcing you to make this withdrawal? The officer asked. No. The officer nodded slowly. Has he become aggressive? He asked Harris. Threatened staff? Tried to leave with someone else's card. Harris's mouth opened, closed. He refused to comply with my instructions, he said finally. He's being uncooperative. Uncooperative, The word hung in the air. The younger officer shifted. "We can't arrest someone for being uncooperative with a bank manager," he said. "I didn't ask you to arrest him," Harris shot back. "I asked you to help verify his identity and ensure this isn't a scam." The older officer exhaled. "Look," he said, glancing between Walter and Harris. "We can run his name, check outstanding warrants, that kind of thing. But if everything matches and he insists the account is his, you'll need something more substantial than a gut feeling to justify detaining him." Harris's eyes flashed. "I have more than a gut feeling," he said. "His profile doesn't fit this account. High net worth, low activity in this branch, no previous large cash withdrawals. This kind of pattern often indicates." The attorney in the crowd stepped forward again. And stay with me here. "It could indicate that your customer is wealthy and rarely needs cash," she said tartly. "Did you consider that?" Laughter rippled nervously around the room. Harris's cheeks reddened. "We had to be cautious," he said, defensive. "Our fraud losses have gone up this quarter. Our job is to protect the bank's assets." "And the customers," Walter added quietly. Everyone looked at him. "Your job," he continued, "is to protect the customer's assets." Harris gave a tight smile. "Exactly," he said. "Which is what I'm doing." Walter nodded slowly. "By calling the police on a man with valid ID, confirmed phone number, and matching credentials," he said. "Because he doesn't fit whatever pattern you're comfortable with." He wasn't raising his voice, but each word carried. The girls' livestream comments filled with flames and angry faces. The older officer shifted his weight. "Mr. King," he said, "if you'd like, we can step outside to talk about this more privately." Walter looked at him steadily. "No," he said. "I have nothing to discuss privately. The humiliation happened publicly. It can be resolved publicly." "You're escalating this," Harris said. "If you just—" "I'm not escalating anything," Walter said, finally letting a thread of steel slide into his tone. "I walked in here to withdraw my money. You escalated. You questioned my legitimacy. You implied criminal intent. You had me surrounded. You called the police." He lifted his chin, eyes sweeping the lobby. "I want your name, your badge number," he said to the officers. "And I want a copy of whatever report you file. I'll also need footage from the bank security cameras for this time period." "You can request that through," the officer began. "Through corporate," Walter finished for him. "I know the process." The older officer frowned slightly. "You seem very familiar with bank procedure, sir." "I am," Walter said. The doors hissed open again. This time, the figure who walked in was not wearing a uniform. She was in a crisp navy suit, heels clicking on the marble. Dark hair pulled back, face set like she'd run down 15 flights of stairs or through a brick wall to get here. A couple of staff members stiffened. "Ms. Lin," the teller murmured, eyes widening. The young woman with the phone whipped her camera toward the door. The livestream chat went wild. At JJ_live. "Wait, is that the CEO?" At Finance Bro 89. "Bro, that's Rachel Lynn from CNBC last month." The CEO of Landmark Bank strode into the lobby, scanning the scene. Her gaze caught on the officers, on Harris, on the cluster at the counter. Then she saw Walter. Her steps faltered. For a heartbeat, everything else disappeared from her expression. "Mr. King," she blurted. The lobby seemed to inhale. Harris blinked. "Ms. Lin," he said, startled. What are you doing here? Is there a scheduled?" She ignored him. Her heels clicked sharply as she closed the distance, stopping across from Walter. "Are you all right?" she asked, voice low, threaded with something like horror. "So, what happened?" He regarded her calmly. "Good afternoon, Ms. Lin," he said. "I came to make a withdrawal." She looked past him at the teller's screen, at the officers, at Harris. Slowly, the color drained from her face. "You called the police?" she asked, turning toward Harris. He straightened defensively. "I had to be cautious," he said. "This gentleman was attempting a large cash withdrawal with suspicious behavior." "And suspicious," she repeated, eyes blazing. She took a breath, visibly fighting for control, and turned to the officers. "Officers, thank you for responding," she said. "You can stand down. There's been a—" she swallowed hard. Monumental error. We still need to document, the older officer began. You will, she said. I'll be following up. Personally. The younger officer shifted, watching her carefully now. Harris frowned. Ms. Lynn, with all due respect, we don't know this man from. Rachel Lynn whipped around, incredulous. You don't know him, she echoed. Her gaze darted to the girl's phone, to the lawyer, to the shoppers and delivery drivers and nurses watching with their breath held. Then she pivoted toward the wall behind the teller line. There, framed among the generic motivational posters and photos of happy families, hung a large corporate image. Board of directors. Rows of faces in small gold frames. Rachel stepped over, yanked the frame off the wall, and carried it back to the counter. She slapped it down on the polished surface. Every eye followed. In the second row, middle, a familiar face looked out. Younger, smoother, wearing a tailored suit. But unmistakable. Walter T. King, chairman of the board. The girl's live stream zoomed in. The chat exploded with all-caps messages. Harris's mouth fell open. This man, Rachel said, each word cutting through the silence, is not a stranger. He is not a suspect. He is not out of pattern. She turned toward Walter, and her voice softened. He owns this bank. The words seemed to hit the room in slow motion. He owns this bank. The delivery driver's jaw dropped. The attorney let out a low, disbelieving whistle. The girl with the phone muttered, "Oh my God," as her viewers skyrocketed. 27.8K watching. At Culture Watch, he owns this bank is about to be a meme and a movement. I feel it. Harris stood frozen, staring at the photo, then at Walter, then at his CEO. That's not possible, he whispered. He can't. I mean, you can't be. Walter simply looked back at him. Mr. Harris, Rachel said, voice like steel wrapped in silk. Meet Mr. King, the largest individual shareholder in Landmark Community Bank, founder of our most profitable subsidiary, chairman of the board for the last 8 years, the man whose signature has approved your branch's budget 3 consecutive quarters, the man who, to put it bluntly, pays your salary. A single, stunned laugh broke from someone in the lobby. The older officer shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very aware of the phones capturing every expression. The younger officer murmured, "Well, damn," under his breath. Harris's face reddened, then blanched, cycles of color washing over him. His fingers twitched like he wanted to reach for the frame and shove it back on the wall, to put the image, the truth, back where it couldn't glare at him from arm's length. I had no idea, he stammered. No, Walter said quietly. You didn't. He let the quiet stretch. You didn't know who I was, he continued, voice low but carrying. And yet you were certain who I wasn't. The room was so silent they could hear the faint hum of the ATM. Rachel closed her eyes for a second, like she was bracing against a headache. Everyone, she said, turning to the watching crowd, I want to sincerely apologize. On behalf of Landmark Bank. This is unacceptable. Her throat worked. Mr. King, if you'd like to move to my office. No. Walter's refusal was gentle but firm. I'm going to stand right here, he said. In the same place I was told I didn't belong. Rachel hesitated, then nodded slowly. All right, she said. Walter turned back to the teller, the young woman with the curls, whose hands were trembling. Miss, he said kindly, can you please process my withdrawal? $40,000 in cash, as requested. And then, if you're allowed, I'd like to sign the authorization form for your overtime, because I imagine this is going to take extra time to sort out. Her eyes filled with tears. Yes, sir, she whispered. She began counting, hands shaking. Rachel stepped aside, pulling her phone from her pocket. She typed a rapid message. Upstairs in the tower, HR inbox is pinged. A general counsel sat up straighter in his chair. A PR director's stomach dropped as she saw the subject line. In the lobby, the live stream continued, capturing every detail. Harris swayed slightly. Ms. Lynn, he said, voice small now. I thought I was following protocol. We have been encouraged to reduce fraud losses, to be vigilant, to. Protocol, she repeated. Her eyes went cold. Tell me, Mr. Harris, she said, each syllable precise. When that white gentleman in the golf shirt came in last week asking for a $30,000 quick loan, did you call the police on him? Harris faltered. No, but that's different. Different how? She asked. He had a long-standing relationship with the branch, and Mr. King has banked with Landmark longer than you've worked here, she said sharply. His relationship is written in half the policy documents you skim if you read the headers. Different how? He wasn't asking for cash, Harris said weakly. That was a credit line. And Mr. King is withdrawing his own funds, she replied, which is usually considered less risky than money we haven't given out yet. Somewhere in the crowd, someone muttered, "Preach." The older officer cleared his throat. "Ms. Lynn," he said, "we still need to note the call. There may be a complaint filed." "Oh, there will be," Rachel said. "From us. About us. Internal complaints. External investigations. We'll cooperate fully." She turned to Walter. "Sir," she said quietly, "we can do this somewhere more private if you'd prefer. The cameras." Walter looked around at the phones, at the faces. "No," he said again. He rested his hand lightly on the counter. "I think this belongs to all of them now," he said. The viral clips hit social media before Walter even left the building. 15-second bursts of humiliation and revelation. An old black man being told to step away from a counter. A bank manager saying, "You people." The arrival of police. The entrance of the CEO. Her words, played and replayed. "He owns this bank." In one angle, you could clearly see Harris's face when the board photo hit the counter. His expression traveled from smug to stunned in a heartbeat. Hashtags bloomed. #he owns this bank. #banking while black. #Walter King. On a finance subreddit, someone dug up an old profile on Walter, how he turned a small auto repair shop into a chain, then taken the profits and quietly invested in community credit unions, then leveraged those stakes into a controlling interest in Landmark when it faltered during a downturn. How he'd insisted on keeping community in the bank's name. In group chats, people forwarded the clip with captions like, "Imagine calling the cops on your own chairman." On cable news, a panel of pundits debated implicit bias in financial services while the clip played in split screen. And inside the glass tower of Landmark Bank, a different kind of fallout began. In a conference room on the 32nd floor, blinds half-drawn, the executive team gathered around a polished table. Phones buzzed with alerts. Laptops glowed with graphs and trending topic lists. Rachel stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired but clear. "We have a choice," she said. "We can treat this like a PR crisis, or we can treat it like a mirror." A few execs shifted uncomfortably. "Either way, we have to get ahead of it," the marketing director said. "Our stock dipped 3% already this afternoon. If we don't put out a statement within the hour, the narrative is that we racially profiled our own chairman," the chief risk officer said flatly. "There isn't a softer version. We can highlight our diversity initiatives," someone suggested weakly. "The scholarships, the community grants, show that this is an isolated incident." "Is it?" Rachel snapped. The room went quiet. She pinched the bridge of her nose for a moment, then dropped her hand. "Yesterday," she said, "I signed off on an internal report from our community relations team. It included 3 separate complaints referencing Maple Street. All vague, all brushed off as customer misunderstandings. 2 weeks ago, HR flagged a pattern in that branch's new account approvals. Demographics skewed far away from the local population. We scheduled bias training." Her voice dripped with bitter irony. "We'll get to it next quarter." Silence. "This is not isolated," she said. "This is a symptom." "How far does it go?" someone asked quietly. "As far as we allow it," she replied. At that moment, Walter sat in a smaller conference room down the hall, hands folded on the table in front of him. The older officer had taken his statement and left, face unreadable. The younger officer had paused on his way out to say, very quietly, "Sir, I'm sorry you had to go through that." Again, Walter had merely nodded. He was tired, bone-deep tired. Nadine sat beside him, eyes red-rimmed from anger and something like sorrow. I should have insisted on going with you, she murmured. This isn't about you, he said gently. I know, she replied. That's the problem. The door opened. Rachel stepped in, closing it softly behind her. Mr. King, she said. Nadine, thank you for waiting. Walter nodded. How bad is it? He asked. She pulled out a chair and sat opposite them. We're trending globally, she said. Our social media team is drowning. Half the comments are outrage. Half are weird memes with your face and cash emojis. Walter huffed a short, dry laugh. Of course, he said. Our share price dropped nearly 5%, she continued. Regulators have already reached out for clarification. I expect a formal inquiry within the week. We've had 3 major clients ask for calls to discuss our commitment to equity. She made air quotes unconsciously, then stopped herself, wincing at the irony. And internally, Nadine asked. Rachel hesitated. Maple Street is shaken, she said carefully. I've placed Mr. Harris on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. The telestaff will be interviewed. We'll review 6 months of footage and decisions. We're expanding that review to other branches with similar metrics. And you? Walter asked. What are you going to do? She met his gaze. Whatever it takes to make this right, she said simply, starting with listening to you. He studied her for a long moment. Sit down. Then, he said, this might take a while. The next day, the official statement went out. No polished spin. No minimizing. It began. At Landmark Community Bank, we failed one of our own. It named Walter. It acknowledged racial profiling. It called the incident a manifestation of biases that remain embedded in our systems and practices. It promised a full external investigation, public reporting of results, structural changes. Some investors grumbled. Some customers closed accounts in protest. Others opened them in solidarity, drawn by the unusual bluntness. Harris watched that statement from his small apartment, his red tie crumpled on the arm of the couch. His phone buzzed with messages. Some were supportive. Man, they're going to throw you under the bus for doing your job. Some were not. You see his face and still thought he was a criminal. He watched the clip again, watched himself, from the outside, the way his jaw tightened when Walter corrected him, the way he talked over the lawyer, the way he said these people and didn't even hear it. He watched Walter's face when the police walked in. Not fear, not surprise, just weariness. For the first time, something ugly and small twisted in his stomach. He thought about the training sessions he'd skimmed, the memos he'd shrugged off, the subtle ways he'd nudged certain clients toward other branches that might better serve their needs. He'd always told himself it was about risk, numbers, patterns, not about race. But the lens of the viral clip made his excuses look thin, flimsy. He closed his laptop, turned off his phone, stayed at the ceiling for a long time. Meanwhile, at another kitchen table, this one in a house only a few blocks from Maple Street, the young nurse who'd been turned away watched the same clip. Her eyes widened when the CEO said, "He owns this bank." "Good," she whispered. "Good." She forwarded the clip to her mother. "Look," she typed. "Remember that bank I told you about? They tried that with their own damn chairman. Maybe now they'll change." Her mother wrote back, "You okay?" She stared at the 3 letters for a long moment, then replied, "Maybe. We'll see." A week later, Walter stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom filled with reporters, cameras, and more bank employees than he could count. The backdrop behind him bore the Landmark logo. To his right, Rachel sat, hands folded. To his left, an empty chair. Symbolic, someone had said, for the voices not present at so many tables. Flashes popped. "Mr. King, Mr. King," a reporter called. "How does it feel to have been profiled by your own institution?" He thought for a moment. "Familiar," he said. Soft laughter, uneasy but understanding, rippled through the room. "I have been profiled in banks since I was 17, he continued. "The only difference this time is the title on my business card." Another reporter raised a hand. "Are you suing Landmark Bank?" He looked at Rachel, then back. "No," he said. "I am not suing a house I helped build. I'm repairing it. But let me be clear. If that video had been of some other elder, some person without my shares in my seat, and if we had not responded, then I would expect lawsuits. I would probably sign them. What consequences will there be for the staff involved? Someone else asked. We're following due process, Rachel said. That includes possible termination, no contact orders for certain customers, and contributions to restitution funds. But this isn't about one manager, Walter said, stepping in. If we fire a man and call the problem solved, we've just found a scapegoat, not a solution. He scanned the room. I am not here to demand revenge, he said. I am here to demand accountability. The murmuring quieted. He rested his hands on the podium. I want to say something, he said, voice lowering, to every person watching this who has ever had their humanity questioned at a counter, at a loan desk, at a job interview, in a waiting room, who has seen suspicion flicker in the eyes of someone holding power over them for no reason except the skin they are wearing and the story someone told about it. He paused. We live in a world where dignity has become conditional, he said. Conditional on your clothes, your accent, your dress, your balance, your ability to prove, over and over, that you are not whatever ugly thing someone decided you look like. His hands tightened on the podium's edge. And yet, he added softly, dignity is supposed to be the starting point, not the finish line. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's the baseline for being alive. A hush fell over the room. He looked straight into the forest of cameras, into all the unseen faces behind them. I did not deserve respect in that bank because I owned shares, he said. I deserved respect because I walked through the door. So did every customer before me. So will every customer after me. None of us should have to carry wealth or titles or cameras to receive what should be given freely. He let the words hang. In banking, we talk a lot about risk, he went on. We model it. We price it. We move it around like cargo. But we rarely talk about the risk we take when we let bias drive our decisions. When we treat certain lives as if they are less trustworthy by default. That risk is enormous. It corrodes trust. It costs us customers, reputation, money. But more than that, it costs us our integrity. He took a breath. This is not a story about an old man and $40,000, he said. This is a story about what happens when a system forgets what it is for. A bank is not just for numbers. It is for people. The numbers are just a way of telling their stories. He glanced at Rachel. I will be working with Ms. Lin and the rest of the board, he said, to overhaul our training, our oversight, our hiring, our metrics. Not just here, he tapped his chest, but hey. He pointed to his head, then, gently, to his heart. We will be publishing our findings, he finished. We will be transparent, and we will be asking our customers to hold us to what we say today. A reporter near the front, eyes shining, raised her hand. Mr. King, she asked, if you could sum up your message to people in positions like that branch manager, what would you say? He thought. When you stand at a counter, he said slowly, and someone stands on the other side of it, ask yourself, if I am wrong about this person, what harm might I do? He let that sink in. And if the harm is to their dignity, their safety, their freedom, he said, be very, very slow to act on your fears. And very, very quick to act on their humanity. 6 months later, Maple Street looked different. Some changes were subtle. The posters on the walls featured less stock photography and more real customers, local faces. Flyers promoting small business grants in the neighborhood. Information in multiple languages. Some changes were structural. The glass office where Harris once stood now belonged to a new branch manager, a black woman in her 40s named Denise who'd spent 20 years working her way up, one cashier shift at a time. She kept her door open. She made a point of walking the floor every hour, greeting people by name. There were new training modules, yes, but there were also new metrics. Branch performance evaluations now included a Community Equity Index, a measure of how closely the branch's loan approvals reflected the demographics and incomes of its surrounding area. Managers were rewarded not just for low default rates, but for closing gaps in access. Customer feedback forms had been reworked. A question at the bottom, in bold. Did you feel seen and respected today? Complaints were no longer filtered through 3 layers before being logged. A community advisory board, made up of local leaders, met monthly with landmark staff to review patterns. The nurse from 6 months ago sat in Denise's office one afternoon, hands trembling as she signed mortgage documents. "Congratulations," Denise said, sliding the final paper toward her. The nurse blinked. "You're sure?" she asked. "It's really approved? Without a co-signer?" "Your credit score is strong," Denise said. "Your employment is stable. You did the work. This is yours." The nurse's eyes filled. "My grandmother rented her whole life," she whispered. "She used to say, 'Houses are for other people.'" Denise's smile softened. "Houses," she said, "are for nurses too." Outside, a group of teenagers sat on the steps, splitting a bag of chips, scrolling their phones. One of them pulled up the old clip of Walter, just for a laugh. "Look at his face when she says he owns the bank," he said. Another teen, a girl with braids, watched and then shrugged. "Cool," she said. "But you shouldn't have to own the bank to not get cops called on you." They all made noises of agreement. That sentiment, more than any official initiative, was the quiet revolution. Up in the tower, Walter sat in a boardroom flooded with late afternoon light. He watched the quarterly community equity report flicker across the big screen. "This section here," he said, tapping a segment with his pen. "We're seeing improvement in mortgage approvals for Black and Latino applicants in 3 districts. That's good, but small business lending is still lagging, especially for first-time borrowers." The head of lending nodded. "We're revising our collateral requirements," she said, "trying to minimize the ways generational wealth gaps lock people out. It's a work in progress." "It always is," Walter said. After the meeting, as the boardroom emptied, Rachel lingered. "You know, some shareholders are still grumbling," she said, half smiling. "They think we overcorrected, that we're distracted from pure profit." Walter chuckled. "How's our stock doing?" he asked. She pulled out her tablet. "Up 7% since the incident," she said. "Not exactly a collapse." "Then they can grumble from their yachts," he said dryly. She laughed, then grew serious. "Does it ever get easier?" she asked quietly. "Carrying this, the knowledge of how fragile dignity is for some people in our systems." He looked out the window at the city. "No," he said. "It gets more familiar. But it shouldn't be easy. The day it feels easy is the day we stop noticing where we're failing." He turned back to her. "But I'll tell you this," he said. "Seeing Maple Street now. Seeing that nurse with her keys. Seeing complaint volumes shift from 'they treated me like I was a criminal' to 'they took too long to call my number.'" He smiled faintly. "That helps." She nodded. "You ever regret staying?" she asked. "Not suing. Not walking away from Landmark and letting us sink in our own mess." He thought about it. "I don't regret choosing repair over revenge," he said. "There's enough wreckage in the world already. We need more people willing to clean." Later that week, Walter rode the bus again. Not because he needed to, because he wanted to remember. He got off at Maple Street and walked into the branch. The security guard, different man now, younger, with a kind face, nodded at him. "Afternoon, Mr. King," he said. "Afternoon," Walter replied, amused. "How'd you know my name?" The guard grinned. "My grandma prints your picture out every time you're in the paper," he said. "Says, that's the man who made them listen." Walter chuckled. "That's not exactly how it went," he said. He stepped up to the counter. The teller, same young woman with curls, more confident now, smiled broadly. "Mr. King," she said. "Nice to see you. Here to test us again." "Would you pass?" he asked. She winked. "Try me," she said. He slid a deposit slip across the counter. "Just adding a little to the community grant fund," he said, "for the next nurse who wants a house." She processed it quickly, then hesitated. "Sir," she said softly, I'm sorry, again, for how I froze that day. I should have spoken up, instead of just looking at him for permission." He met her eyes. "You were in a system that taught you to do that," he said gently. "You're in a different one now. Just promise me, next time your gut says something's wrong, you won't wait for someone else to fix it." She nodded, eyes bright. I promise, she said. He stepped aside and watched as a young man in a worn work jacket came up to ask about opening his first savings account. The teller greeted him with the same respect she'd shown Walter. That, he thought, was the real reversal. Not he owns this bank, but everyone who walks in here owns a piece of dignity that cannot be questioned. As he left, his phone buzzed. A notification from a social media app he rarely used. Someone had tagged him in an old clip. He opened it. There he was again, at the counter, surrounded by suspicion. There she was, the CEO, slapping down the board photo. There was the caption, "He owns this bank." He watched it once, then scrolled down. The top comment, posted just yesterday, read, "The moral of this story isn't secret rich guy wins. The moral is that no one should have to be rich to be treated like a human being." He smiled, slow and deep. Maybe, just maybe, people were starting to hear the right part. And now you, reading this, are standing in your own kind of lobby. Maybe it's a bank counter. Maybe it's a classroom. Maybe it's a hiring committee, a customer service desk, a security line, a group chat, a social feed. You've seen someone questioned, doubted, humiliated for no reason except a story someone told about what they look like or where they come from. Maybe you were the one on the receiving end. Maybe you were the one holding the clipboard. Maybe you were the one in line, eyes lowered, saying nothing. So here's the question Walter would ask you, if you were standing across from him now. The next time you see a moment like that, someone's dignity hanging in the balance, who will you choose to be? The one who escalates, the one who records, the one who speaks, the one who walks away. The story didn't go viral because a rich man owned a bank. It went viral because it exposed a truth we all live in every day. What you do with that truth is yours to decide. So pause for a second. Think about the counters you stand behind and the ones you stand in front of. And ask yourself, if you are wrong about the person in front of you, what harm might you do? And what would it look like, starting today, to act a little slower on your fear and a lot faster on their humanity?